guys? Welcome to another episode of the Mindset Cafe podcast. And today we got a special guest for you, Brent Knott. I met him through the Real Business Owners Mastermind, and I wanted to bring him on today because his mindset and just some of his actions that he's taken thus far is definitely something that you guys can utilize, and his perspective on certain things and his growth that he's had in the last year or so is just, it's awesome to witness. So he owns three car wrap and I guess vinyl wrap dealerships, if I'm not mistaken, right? Okay. And then also he has Torque CRM. So he's a serial entrepreneur, and he moved from Florida and now is living in Mexico. He's doing things. So you know I want to kind of talk about, Brett, I want to start off, give a little background, like your transformation, not just in your mindset, but also, I mean, I saw a picture you had posted of your physical transformation. Did it start like from the physical aspect, or is there a mental shift, or how did that start?
I've always had mental resilience, for sure, with a high threshold for pain and all that stuff. But I've also had like a really all or nothing mindset, and that's not really good for habit forming.
Right.
I I basically got to the point where like I was making my day quote unquote easier by, um, I think I ate Zaxby's every day for 2.5 years.
Wait, what? What is
It's
that?
It's called Zaxby's. It's just like a simple like Burger King style, but it's actually kind of like Chick-fil-A a little bit,
Okay.
but on the East Coast. And they had a Cajun Club sandwich, and so it's a grilled chicken. I'm thinking like that's the healthiest fast food I can have. It's slathered in spicy ranch, and you know, extra fry. Fry turned into extra fry, and uh, and then it turned into the cheese curds, and it's just I was making the easy decision where my employee liked that same thing, and he just had a copy of my card, and I would send him out to do that. So I was like simplifying my life, right? And I was getting those extra minutes to work a little more. Um, but I do think the biggest change was when I started working on myself versus the business, because I always put the business first, like for everything. And moving myself out of the business and doing the workouts, or 75 hard is what I started with, and then just started doing it. I was like, cool, I removed all my extra time that I usually spent. you know I made all these excuses like, oh, I'm studying business at night from 6 o'clock till midnight, listening to podcasts instead of music. Like, I would do that. I would literally work and educate myself at the same time, because I was going to do two things at the same time, and that was going to be better and more effective. So I did that for like years. Um, and I started just hanging around other people that did things entirely different. They seemed to have a lot more free time. They seemed to have a lot more time to themselves. And so I started doing stuff physically, which took me out of the business, which then greatly modified things. It was weird. It was no longer are you a fat slob that has this big, I'm a visionary, not an integrator. So I'm trying to cast a vision, and like, are you really going to believe somebody that's like not even taking care of themselves? Like, so started kind of seeing some synchronicities with that. The team was starting to, you know, me being a big guy running all the time, specifically was the method that we chose, because I don't like doing running. And if I can do something I hate every day, then I can sit down and look at P&L ledger, or sitting down and have a hard conversation with somebody. Like, it's a lot easier to train your mind. But long story short, yeah, the physical thing definitely changed my outlook on everything. But most importantly, I think it made my word mean more, because, like, you know, I stayed consistent with it for a long time, and I started saying like, I'm going to go run 20 miles this Saturday. And then they would see on Facebook I ran 25. Like,
Right.
like, it's just like, this dude's a nut. So he's doing what he's saying. So when I say I want three shops, or I want you to have your own location and stuff, like, it has a lot more weight to it, I feel. So we do like an internal franchising system, if you will, that we're working towards. It doesn't exist yet, but that's essentially what we're trying to build, to where we promote from within. And, so a new person walking off the street, I literally have a piece of paper saying, this is exactly how you get your own shop.
Right.
And so I need a lot of integrity in order for somebody to really buy in on that. Because if not, it's like, man, this guy's blowing smoke up my ass and he's going to use me. So that's kind of, I definitely feel like the physical is what elevated things the most.
No, definitely. And honestly, you said something that's like super keen there is that your word, has so much weight and your word has value, right? And we start to focus on being a trustworthy person and making sure that our word holds weight with others, but sometimes we feel, or we tend to let that slip when we're talking to ourselves. We'll tell ourselves, like you said, I'm going to run 20 miles this weekend, and then all of a sudden the weekend hits and you start to tell yourselves excuses. So I think it's awesome that you started to have that perspective switch, that you not only have to do what you say when you tell someone else that you're going to do it, so you can show them that you have integrity, but you also have that integrity within yourself as well.
Yeah. No, I definitely think that I said that the other day. That I can't remember who said it, but basically is the number one person you spend time with is yourself. So
Yep.
don't don't lose that person's trust. And I was like, damn, that's actually pretty solid. So yes, I do agree that your word with yourself is actually the most important.
No, definitely, I 100% agree. And you said something that I want you to kind of elaborate on. You said that telling yourself you're going to go do something sucky, such as running, because you don't like to do it, right? I mean, I don't like running either, and I know you did that crazy 50K or the 50-mile run, right?
Yeah,
you know
I did 50 and I'm training for 100.
Yeah, yeah, that's nuts. But since you don't like running and you force yourself to do it, right? You said that now sitting down and looking at P&Ls or having that hard conversation is easier. Can you elaborate into that?
Yeah, I mean, literally every morning I wake up, I'm like, I do not want to run today. And running specifically has helped me learn a little bit of like, I'm very bad at agendas, very bad at calendars. I'm trying to be careful of how I say that because I don't want to create an identity around it, but like, and I'm loose with words. But these are things that I'm not naturally good at, that I have not acquired a skill for just yet, and so I'm working towards those things. But it takes a great deal of effort. I'm much better at reacting, and but there's a ceiling to that. Like you can only react so far,
Yeah,
and I've definitely met that ceiling. And doing things like running every single day, and literally the first 5 minutes, like, God, this is horrible. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. Um, all the way up until running 50 miles, and I was injured that day. Like I literally, but when you run that many days of hating something for something that you're going to hate, you're also like, I'm not gonna not do it because I've hated it this whole time just to hate this 50-mile run. Like I'm gonna go do this. And I had a ITBS, so like literally in my knee, it felt like a knife was in my knee because my IT band was inflamed. And so in that, the lesson I got out of very, very vividly was running the play, and 50 miles is boring. Like it was 12 hours.
that's ridiculous.
Like, and I'm alone. I'm the last place. I've got nobody to talk to until mile 26 is when I met with Wes. Because I did it all self, like sustained, minus the events checkpoints. Like I didn't have a lot of people to support me. So I talked to nobody for 26 miles. They literally questioned me, like, "Are you okay?" Like, because I was talking to nobody at the aid stations. I just stared at the ground when the guy would ride by the bike, and like I'm like the last guy. I was like the Terminator. I didn't try not to give pain a voice. And but I looked back on the data of the 50-mile run, and I told myself the minute that my knee flared, like I had walked 2 months prior to that, so I was trying to sustain my conditioning, and I decided to walk run the entire thing, and I would walk a quarter mile, run 3/4, and the goal was just to get to the next walk. And I kept doing that. Just get it's going to hurt for 3/4 of a mile, and then just get to the quarter mile walk. And you're going to feel good. do it, and then I only had to do that 50 times, you know. So that's what I told myself at least, and so I did it like to the T. Like if you look at the charts, it's literally perfect. Like it's literally blue green with perfect spacing. Um, and I learned to just run the play on things. Like I couldn't control my knee. I couldn't control how I felt. I couldn't control anything else. I could just only get to the next quarter mile. And I think business is a lot like that too. Like I can't control, there's a lot of things you can control proactively, but at the end of the day, you also can't control economy. You can't control whatever. Like you can't control somebody leaving you. You can't control somebody that has to move because of family member or something like that. Like, but if you just keep doing the boring, mundane thing, which is business, it'll work out. And so now I'm trying to learn, like, apply that lesson into my life now, where I removed all the things I shouldn't be doing. How can I do the boring, mundane things every single day that I actually like, and have that actually push whatever the needle is forward for me? And so that's what I'm currently like in the process of defining.
No, that's dope. And so even like when you were saying like when you're doing your run, you're, because I mean, I do this with, with just workload stuff too, and I know you probably do it as well. But you set like little mini milestones so that you're not focusing on the overall task of running, let's say 50 miles or getting this project done, but you're setting mini milestones within that, so you feel that sense of accomplishment a few times, which keeps that momentum snowballing all the way till the end. You know.
Yeah, what was really crazy is you're talking about momentum. I actually, so I had some pretty funny milestones, like, beat Trevor. Like I had all, like I being a natural visionary that I am. Like at first I was like, I wanted to run the 50 miles in St. George just to piss Trevor off because I beat him in his own town. Um, that didn't work out for me because of a hurricane, but I called, I posted a video in our mastermind group, the inner circle, saying like 30 miles ain't nothing. Like, that was something I looked forward to. And then I
Right.
listened, he's the one who challenged me to run. So he had a specific episode with his mom that I wanted to listen to. And I intentionally did not listen to it for months just to listen to it at mile 45. And then, but at mile 45, it was crazy. As I'm listening to that episode, I started finally passing people. I didn't see anybody until like mile 45.
That's
So I'm
crazy.
by myself this entire time, and except for Wes at mile 26, and he joined me. And I started passing people, and then I looked down, and I actually called him because I was running a 10.5 minute pace at mile 45.
Damn.
Yeah, with a bum knee.
Damn.
I sustained that for like 3 miles, and then I was spent. Like I was done for the last two. I had to almost completely walk because I was literally out of energy. But I had this crazy high at like mile 45 where it was like I hadn't ran at all after 11 hours of running. So, um, but yes, mini milestones are huge. Those are those little mini goals that help see light at the end of the tunnel, essentially. Um, and that is definitely a big thing. Like, um, just get to the next minute, even like little
Right.
small. You have to gamify it almost in your head.
No, definitely. And honestly, like that, I think I posted a picture yesterday of like two graphs of like one motivation and one is, discipline or consistency. And it's one of those things where if you're consistent, like you're saying, you're passing people, at mile 45, yeah, you probably sped up a little bit, but at the same time, it's not like you were, keeping that pace the whole time, but you were consistent the whole time. Where most people tend to have bursts of energy in, business or in, just life and relationships. And even like, yourself, like if you're going on dates and you're super lovey here and you're all affectionate today and this week, and then next week it's like a completely different person, and then it goes back and forth, the strength and like the growth from that isn't going to be as great as if you're consistently, hitting those milestones and giving yourself milestones to do day in day out, whether you feel like it or not. you know so I mean, how how has your mindset, shifted now that you've, stepped away and stuff, compared to where you when you were in the business? Like, what's the biggest takeaway that you've had, just reflecting within yourself?
I would say being more curious. Like I don't put anything down. Trying to, I've always been what I consider to be like an introverted person. Like I'm a-okay with being in a room by myself day in and day out. That's literally the life I lived for years. Totally happy. Um, Overall, at least that's what I told myself was happy, but it was my version of happy of what I knew.
Hmm.
So now I'm a lot more curious. Um, I do still spend a lot of time in solitude, and I think that's a good strength of mine that I spend a lot of time thinking, being introspective a little bit more with clarity on myself, um, which gives me a better idea and sense of ideas. The biggest thing that I've gotten since stepping away, though, is especially if you're a very emotional person, like it's so much easier to make decisions, if you will. It is a lot harder to be empathetic sometimes, unfortunately, because you are distant. So you still have to kind of that you have to nurture. That was something I accidentally kind of went too far into for a brief period of time, where I wasn't empathetic to people's circumstances that had taken over all the responsibility that I had relinquished. And the only reason why I could do that was because that person took that from me, and I was being a little lacking of empathy. Like, oh, it's not really that hard, like kind of thing. Well, maybe it's hard for them. Maybe it wasn't hard for me, but it's hard for them. So empathy is harder to practice, but making decisions or seeing flaws is so much easier when you're not in the day to day, because you just hear the conversation and immediately like your mind's already clear. You're not distracted. It's like, why are we doing that?
Right.
It's just immediately like, instead of like, oh, it's not a big deal, it's like that it turned into a mountain. It's just like, why are we doing the simple thing wrong?
Right.
And so that has been the clarity on seeing problems or solutions has increased greatly.
No, that's awesome. How do you how have you tried to? I mean, because I'm in the same boat in a sense, you know, and I don't know if it's because of our personalities or because even just being entrepreneurs, it's one of those things you just do what you need to do, and you don't always understand or have empathy for the frustrations or the struggles of others that especially that are working under you, because for you you just get it done, right? So for you, what has been something that you've tried to do to build your empathy skill, if you will?
That one's hard because
Yeah.
unfortunately, me, even when I am like empathetic, I'm very flat. Like I've had to learn how to be jovial and have more of a face. Like I have horrible RVO at all times, and people are like, I'm the kind of person where growing up, we'd be at the theme park and parents would be like, dude, smile. I'm like, dude, I'm having a blast. Like, leave me alone. Like, you know what I mean? Like, don't tell me I'm not happy. And like, so, like that's how I grew up, and I've had to learn and have a certain battery for that. And, so I try to have conversations during like while my battery's high so that I can kind of put on the face. Like it's not that I'm being fake, it's just I can actually create a little bit more energy behind how I talk to people and stuff. That's helped a lot. Trying to make sure to schedule it during a window of time where like it's like, game time for this specific subject matter, versus like on demand. Cause like if it's on demand, like I'm not going to be empathetic. Like
Right.
it's just, oh, you have a problem with this customer, like, and are we going to either serve the customer or we're going to tell them bye? Like,
Right.
quit complaining. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I would say the biggest thing for me specifically is just trying to operate within a certain window that I can control and be prepared for it, to where I'm not so blank faced or blank minded. Because if I'm on the bottom of my battery, I can still perform, but I can't. I turn back into my RBO phase, and like people can't read my emotions. And even if I'm happy, people are like, "Well, you just don't seem very happy." I'm like, "I'm stoked. Like this is fine," but people read it completely wrong. And so, I definitely try to have those calls on a structured time. That's helped me the most because I'm very empathetic. I have a huge bleeding heart for people, but at the same time, it's hard for me to sometimes to show it because my I think the correct word is I am very empathetic, but I think the word's apathetic. Like I flatline my emotions, unfortunately. Like people don't read me well at all.
No, I get that. I think for me, it's one of those things where I had to realize that whether it's through, for partnerships or for, the staff and the team, it's one of those things where for me it's just common sense to do it, or you're not done until you're done, right? It's not, clock in, clock out kind of deal as a business owner. But even just in life, certain things that I would view as just do it, or, why are you complaining about it kind of thing. You have to realize that not everyone is you and not everyone thinks like you or like us, right? And that's what, also makes us great and separates us from, some people, but at the same time, it's also a weakness too. And it's one of those things where I've had to have that personal mindset shift in perspective of, okay, like how are they feeling, or instead of just, telling them like how you said, so are we doing A or B? Like, I don't understand what you don't understand, right? So, and having to actually think, okay, so why are they asking me? Is what I think common sense maybe not common sense, and really dig into that. And believe me, it's something, it's not easy, you know.
Yeah, and the second thing is people also deal with things differently. Like me, like I can process at this point now. I used to like deal with all the emotion and all that stuff, but through time, I've learned to deal with it faster. And so, like my ops manager, she'll call me and say, "Okay, so we have this thing," and she'll tell me the whole story. I'm like, I don't want the story. I want the cliff notes. And I've had to learn to just let her tell me the story because it's actually her venting and
Right.
processing. And that's her way of processing. My way of processing is complete silence and just in thought.
Yeah, yeah.
I won't talk about it, but I still process it. I'm having the conversation with myself. And so it's just a different understanding that people are different. And that's unfortunately like why the skill cap's so high in leadership, is because you have to identify each person's like how they mechanically deal, how do they do things, how do they get from A to B. All that stuff is totally different than you, and that's great because they are why I have the time I have. Like,
Right.
so I should nurture that. you know I shouldn't try to exactly change them. I can try to help them build upon it, but I can't really change them.
Right. And I don't think it's a good thing to try to change them. It's one of those things within the growth of within yourself, of learning how to read people, and, learning what their love languages or what they appreciate, if it is, financial, if it is just praise, whatever the case is. And then also, like how you're saying, how do they cope with things? Because I'm the same kind of way. Like, I don't talk about my problems necessarily. And if you have a problem, like, give me what's wrong. Like, I don't need all the backstory behind it. Give me the facts. But at the same time, I realize other people aren't like that, so I've had to do the same thing. But for me, like, I won't vent my problems out to most people, because it's like, what, me telling you them, what does it do for you? Nothing. Does it solve them for me? No. So then what's the purpose of me, spreading that now, just, bringing everything back up to the top right now. So I've had to, I go through that as well. um, but it's it's definitely a skill that as leaders, we do have to build, and a perspective that we do have to build, that, we are different than them, and using their skills and their who they are, and leaning into that builds them and builds us, right? Because you learn how to read those people, and it gives you a new perspective on how people think, how people, are the way they are, you know have you noticed, with you being in Mexico, have you noticed, is there a different, like, mindset, or different, obviously there's a different way of life. I mean, I see you, I'm jealous of the way you're eating out there. Like, not, no lie. But I mean, in terms of, like, just daily living, is there a different mindset out there?
Yes. I I would say that the single most thing that I've gotten being over here is people have such a get it done attitude anyway. They just don't have actual opportunity. Like there is actually opportunity. I don't know. I haven't identified what the divide is. I'm sure it's a lot deeper than what I think that it is. I think some of it's education, and like I see a lot of kids that are not going to school because they're supporting their parents at a taco stand and stuff like that. And I think that's awesome at the same time, because I'm not a big proponent of school, But that's one of the things I try to do is I try to actually talk to the street vendors. I talk, as good as I can with using a translator, um, and or Deanna. But I will, I currently visit one taco stand every single week. His little kid named Brian, and I legitimately will ask him questions like he is not in school. He's 8, and I'm just like, so what are you gonna do when you get older? He's like, I'm gonna run my taco stand. I was like, yeah, like your dad? He's like, yeah. I was like, what's your favorite car? Because he likes cars. Because he loves like he likes all my stuff on Instagram. It's crazy. And and I was like, what's your favorite car? He's like Audi R8. I'm like, well, how are you gonna buy one? And I just try to get them to dream a little bit because I think people's dreams are kind of squashed on the classism here is really bad. Like where you're either really rich or you're not. Whether however you get rich, like there's plenty of business people here, and there's a lot of opportunity in that regard. And the labor rate's really low, so I'm sure the margins are great. I'm not sure because I don't run a business here, but I pay attention to it. And so like, but what I really do notice is even the people on like the lower level of class, they go to work. I see the same people at the same red light every single day washing windshields with a smile on their face.
Yeah.
And I think it's genuine. Like I don't even think it's fake to try to get some money. Like they're just appreciative for what they have, and they get up every day for the most part and do what they need to do. There's obviously the beggars, um, or the manipulators, but there's certain ones that I see that just operate with a smile on their face and they're just happy to be there and to be capable. Actually, this is the craziest thing. I sent a video to Trevor. There's a guy that's for a fact homeless. Like I pass him all the time. And I also see him running every day. Homie runs every day. And I'm just like, that's so crazy. Like, dude is like, got it rough. And he's still taking care of himself.
Yeah, I mean, he's utilizing what he can do. Like, just because there's certain factors or certain limitations, like not having a home, doesn't mean you can't do other things. And going into like what you were saying about the the classism and stuff, that do you think so? Like the mindset, or you're going into how you talk to the little boy, which I'm pretty sure that's the same taco stand that you were working behind, right?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, they even let me work it.
Yeah, I've seen that. But when you're talking to him and you're getting him to dream, right? The thing with like us here in the US is like we're sold those dreams from like being a little kid, right? We're told like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Versus I don't, and I'm not saying I know this for a fact. I'm saying, do you think it's a potential that he's grown up being told that this is what you're going to be, you know? So
I
it's
do think it's definitely somewhat of their identities being capped. And I do think that it's not necessarily their fault either. I
mm,
think it's because of a survival mechanism more than anything. It's like this is what we do to eat.
right.
And they just do that. This is proven. He's done a taco stand on the same corner for 25 years.
Yeah, and but that's the thing is like, I mean, it could have been his dad that was doing that before, and so forth. But it's one of those things where when you're almost born into that role, and no one has gave you like the approval or the confirmation that you can do whatever you want to, it may be, but it may not be the lack of opportunity, but it's the lack of imagination,
Could be.
right?
It definitely could be. I think I was talking to a guy yesterday. He was telling me that another secondary problem is, which I mean, actually, to what you just said, think of how many people don't take advantage of the opportunity that they have in America,
Hmm.
right? So imagine in a state where it's actually really difficult to have opportunity. It's there still, but it's a whole lot taller mountain,
Yeah.
right? And so, and then there's secondary controls that I was unaware of, kind of aware of, here, where like the banks have a lot of control, where like there's an actual ceiling on the bank accounts. Like you have to get
I mean,
approved for a higher, like to put more funds into it.
really?
Yes,
Like in
and
just one bank, or if you like, if I had two different banks kind of
I
deal?
had no clue about all that detail,
Oh,
but like I did hit it on accident, and then it made sense when I was talking to the guy. So I'm an expelled distributor. and I was at the distribution center yesterday to pick up some film because I'm going to go to Cabo this weekend to hang some window tent, and for a free Cabo trip. So, um, but the the banks control how much you're like. They really watch your money, like big time. Like, I mean, we think the U.S. really watches things, but like the banks in Mexico really watch your money. And I hit this whenever I was transferring some funds um, to my girlfriend down here to pay the deposit on the house because I could, like, it was cheaper for me to pay it this way as a salary, like a VA or something like that. Well, I paid like $2,000. It exceeded her ceiling. It wouldn't let me send the money.
Wow.
Yep.
So, when I was in Cabo a couple years ago, at my cousin's bachelor party, we were told that, if you buy a house in Mexico, it's not like buying a house in the US, right? Like, you don't technically own it, you're leasing it for 99 years or something like that, right? That's
Yeah, there's a
crazy.
lot of different laws, and you can own the house on the dirt, and somebody could take the dirt right from you, and all kinds of like shady stuff that, like, if you're not careful, like, you can greatly be taken advantage of.
Damn, that's crazy. That's crazy though, to think about like how much control the banks have in you. And I mean, even going into like the school system and everything like that, you don't really know what is being taught at every level. I mean, even in the US, right? But it's one of those things where I think it's amazing. And honestly, I didn't know that about your conversations with like the little boy and stuff, like in depth. And it's awesome to hear that because you don't know what your conversations today and this year are going to have on that kid's life in 20 years. you know you might be that one person where he is now in the upper class in Mexico, or has moved, and he's saying, yeah, there was this one white dude back in the day, he was the only white dude in our town, and he used to tell me I could be whatever I want. So I mean, honestly, that's amazing, and most people wouldn't go out of their way. So obviously you had enough mindset shift and perspective change within yourself to notice that, and start to do the little things, directly and indirectly like that with someone else. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I just put money first for too long. Like, I mean, I made a fair amount of money, especially as a technician or a labor guy, whatever you want to call it, like being the skilled employee. I made a lot of money. And, of course, there's a ceiling to that. And so, in year four of my home, I was able to pay it off, like, cash. During COVID, all that stuff. Like, so that was cool. But like, I've just decided to, like, I'm still working on money's important, but it's not my number one right now. I'm trying to go after like life experiences and impact a little bit more, and then how can I leverage that into where it's a very positive money making system, to where I'm not running people over and stuff like that, to where um, it just all falls in line. And I don't really care about being a monster company. Obviously, I want to be incredibly successful and stable. But at the same time, I want to dial it back and actually see like how, like, coming here actually has made me more grateful for what I do have, and like how I can do things and how I can operate, and all that stuff. So, that is why I talk to the people, because it gives me a good perspective. So many people cry and complain about their, $40,000 job or whatever, and like, I'm just like, there's lawyers here that make 12,000 a year starting,
Yeah,
and they're stoked.
it's crazy to think about.
I mean, it's just a perspective flip, and so I've just decided that I kind of want to just travel around, and I want to do that in a lot of different cultures. Like, it doesn't have, Mexico was just easy for me to fly back and forth to Florida,
Right.
so it was the easiest access. The airport here is awesome, and so I'm able to get. If tomorrow there's a major emergency in my shop, I can be there.
Yeah, no more driving across.
No, I will do that once and never again, and I only did that for my dogs.
That shit is nuts. I can't believe you did that.
Me neither.
So, before we wrap this up, I like to ask people, basically two questions. One question is, what's the best advice, or whether it's directly or something that you heard, what's the best advice that you've gotten that has led you to where you are, or made you become who you've become?
It's actually the very first question that got asked to me too in business by my mentor. And I thought for sure he was going to ream me whenever I came back on the 30-day tester that I did with my business to see if I wanted to actually do this or if my business was at the point that could sustain. Um, and basically he sat me down and he's like, "What the hell are you doing?" And I just looked at him and I said, "You remember the first time you talked to me and you said, 'What do you want in life? What does it look like and how are you going to get there?'" And I was like, I think I finally started answering that question, and I haven't solved the riddle, but I'm actually working towards it. And he told me that at following like this, he's worth a lot. I don't know what he's worth, but he doesn't brag, he doesn't boast. Um, but he told me in order to get to the point that he was at, he had to sacrifice a lot. And he told me very specifically he regretted nothing. So all the time away from his family, all that stuff. And he didn't say it in like a selfish way. He just said like that made me happy.
Right.
That was good for me, but my lifestyle, I'm mentoring you. Don't see my life and think that that's for you.
Right.
And so that, like, what do you want? What does it look like? And how are you going to get there?
Right.
How are you really going to be happy? And what does that take? That was probably the best piece of advice I've ever gotten. And it took me 10 years to like literally think about it, process it. Like, if you really sit down and ask yourself that question, it's a hard question to answer.
Honestly,
And
sometimes the
so,
simple ones are.
yeah. And so I told him that in that meeting. And when he asked me, what the hell am I doing? And he legitimately was just like, awesome. I'm proud of you. I was like, I thought I was going to get chewed out because he's quick to do that. Most people would tell you you're throwing 10 years of business away. I basically just walked away from a business where I'm letting the employees operate it in a way. And it may fail, it may succeed. I don't know. It depends on my leadership ability and their ability to receive and perform.
Yeah, but I mean that's why it's not like you're 100% stepping away either, right? So it's one of those.
Pretty close. I mean, I do pay attention. Like, I mean, I like, but the amount of effort that I'm actually putting into it is very little because the second piece of advice he gave me was that I couldn't do both. I couldn't do torque and that. I don't have the capacity yet to run both. And if I do
Right.
that, I'm gonna have to pass both. And so I decided to fully commit to one.
No, and if you can't step away from your business at some point and let it run itself, then you still have a job, right? You know. So now the second question is, what's the worst advice or worst topic someone's basically gave to you on the flip side of that, and what are your thoughts on it now?
That's a hard one because there's a lot. But I would say it wasn't necessarily advice. It comes back to my mentor again. I'll try to be short with it with like a couple of examples, but it really comes down to like validating your circumstance in a way. Where one time on Facebook, my mom told me, "I'm so proud of you. You're such a good businessman." Well, he saw that and he didn't say anything until we had a meeting one day, and he looked at me and said, "Son, you're a lot of things, but you're not a good businessman yet." And he goes, because you're not a business owner, you're just a worker bee still. Like you're still learning how to be a businessman. It's not that you won't be, but you know. And so with that's the example. But I think the worst advice was listening to all the other blue collar, groups in my community. They all praised me for being like I was literally known as like the guy who was at work at 10 o'clock at night. And so I built
Yeah.
this culture of pride where like even when I wasn't working at night, I would post at night like I was. You
It
know what I
became
mean?
your identity.
It really did. And so, which was also my downfall. So I think thinking like everybody says work smarter, but nobody actually understands like the granular levels of what that actually means. But I would say that definitely the worst advice I've gotten is that working hard is the only way to do something.
Yeah, I would agree.
It, it's not. I think
Right.
there's a window. I do think there's a window, but it has to be intentional. And that's the problem. Most people say work hard. And then it's like, well, work hard till when? Like there's people here in Mexico that clearly have been working hard for 80 years, but they have nothing to show for it. They're incredibly skilled. Same within America. Like There's incredibly skilled people who work incredibly hard. The person who helped me in this industry the most, like the day one that I hopped in this industry, is currently having medical issues, and all he's done is worked hard, and he got far. But he's like, now guess what? Like, it's falling off. His business is gonna die the minute he quits working.
And I think that's the piece of that people take, because it's one of those like sayings that it's a simple saying, so people take it for what it is. Work hard. And it's like, okay, but what is hard? Like, if you really think about it, what is hard, right? So that's where people are like, okay, I'm just gonna do busy work, and that's hard. It's like, it has to be what's hard to you. And again, like, I agree with you. There's a window, and there is stages that change within that, right? You don't have to be that person that's just posting at 10 o'clock at night because it's part of your identity, right? That's the stage you are in. But like your mentor said, you're not a great business owner yet, right? And now you've outgrown that. But the thing is, like, you're building to who you are, and you're working hard now so that your hard is going to be different, you know
And the
so
best part is, if I asked him if I'm a good businessman now because I'm here, he'd still tell me no. Because it's all perspective, right? Like,
right.
he legit this man ran a profit and loss every day. Like, the dude's a beast, and that's his superpower. And so yeah, running business is a very fundamental thing, and it's boring, and it's you know, so it's not all bright eyed and bushy
I appreciate you taking the time out of your, vacation life. Just kidding. No,
tailed.
but no, honestly, I do appreciate you taking the time, to hop on the call, because your perspective, just knowing you in this past year, it's amazing to see you just transition from what I've seen, and then you showing your progress from what you used to be. It's awesome, and I commend you for the work that you've done thus far, and I can't wait to see how much you grow in the near future.
Yeah, man. Appreciate it.
I'll see you in Utah.
Yeah, I'll be there.
All right, brother. Thank you.
See ya.